If you are a problem solver and find yourself taking on too much, stick around and find out how you can not do that and do it in a healthy way and avoid burnout.
Hey guys, it's Mindi Linscombe, your host of the Something New Show, where we like to learn how to live a life worth celebrating. And I'm so excited to have a good friend here in the studio today. We have Whitney Kroneberger, and I am glad she didn't have to travel far. She's actually a life coach here in Colorado, and so we got to bring her into the studio, and I can't wait to tell you a little bit more about her. But thanks for coming in today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yes, let me read a little bio about Whitney so that you guys kind of know who she is before we start our chit chat today. But Whitney is a life and business coach for Christian female entrepreneurs, but she also works with any sort of business owner or someone trying to, amplify their life, I would say.
Yes.
And after a 10-year dream career at a nonprofit here in town, she was working in talent acquisition and human resources, serving hiring managers and C-suite executives. But now she specializes in coaching high-achieving women that are experiencing burnout, loneliness, and shame. She helps them develop rhythms of rest, implement boundaries, uncover their identity and assignment, navigate transition, and find joy in the life that they've built while they are building and scaling their business. She also has her own podcast called The Original Female Entrepreneur and does speaking engagements as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
I am excited to talk about a topic that is pretty hot, especially this time of year. But before we get there, I would love to hear how you went from being a career person to deciding I am going to coach.
Yeah, that was not expected. So my husband and I met in college. He had an internship down here in Colorado Springs with Compassion International, and I knew I was going to marry him, and he didn't really know that about me. And so it was still taking some convincing. But I told him, I'm going to follow you down to Colorado Springs and I'll just find a job. And he didn't think that was a good idea at the time. It worked out great. But I started looking around for jobs and interviewed at a nonprofit called Young Life. And they had an entry-level finance position open, and I met, I think, some of the qualifications maybe, and had a degree. So I thought, yeah, I should be making great money. But nonprofit world isn't so much like that. So I sat down in the interview, and I had the hiring manager and then the person that was doing the talent acquisition. She brought me in, and she was doing the hiring. And I remember thinking in that conversation, I want this job, but I really want her job, because I loved just that conversation and the way she asked questions and got to know me, and was really intentional about matching me up with the hiring manager. So I started working there, and I was pretty intentional and moved into human resources within the first couple of years. And within a few years after that, moved into talent acquisition. And so that was a dream role. I was hiring for, like my bio said, executives in the C-suite, and just putting together teams was it was just a dream for me. And then I got bit by the entrepreneur bug a little bit and figured out, there's this thing where you can kind of work for yourself and set your own hours. And I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, and thought that sounds like a lot of freedom, and I think I would really love that. And so decided to leave that. I was in the network marketing space for a little bit. I built that to 6 figures. So left Young Life and quickly realized what I liked about that space was coaching. And I loved being able to identify roadblocks, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, just the roadblocks in people's lives that were keeping them from showing up in their business in a powerful way or the way they wanted to. And so I decided, I love working with women. I love working specifically with ambitious women. And I find that there's a lot of things that are unspoken with ambitious women. And so I was like, I want to talk about those things. And so started a coaching business And
were you coaching, did you get that, oh, I love this when you were coaching people in your network marketing business that you had grown? Because I'm thinking at the nonprofit, if you're talent acquisition, you weren't really coaching people there.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily coaching like the role that I'm in now. But it was was seeing things from a different perspective and asking the right questions to get people to think outside of kind of the lane that they were in. And so not just hiring for the role, but hiring the person. Like, what is that person capable of? What role could they grow into? Not just, can they do this job? So it was kind of baby coaching probably.
Yeah. And
identifying
things. And
yeah. And then the network marketing was a lot more coaching. And then I hired a coach to help me learn how to coach, which is kind of a funny thing in the coaching world. But I hired somebody and really just dove into it, and then went and got certified as a coach as well, and my degree was in sociology. So I just loved working with people. It's just right
along.
Yeah. And so,
So it's life coaching, just to clarify, because, I've had a lot of different guests on the show. Some people are business coaches, some people are, counselors, but what would you say is kind of the difference when you think of life coaching versus those other things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really think of the difference between life coaching and counseling as kind of a point where counseling stops in the healing process, or getting somebody to a place where they're able to think in the future about what they want to do and how to implement those things and manage their time and things like that. So if I have a client come to me that says, I've got some healing to do, I always send them back and say, you go to counseling first and then come, and then we'll pick up there, and we're going to talk about the next year, 3 years, 5 years, bucket list things. And then I'm going to help you implement those. And so I kind of pick up where they might leave off in some ways. I'm very future oriented. And then as far as the differences between business and life, I think you and I were kind of talking about this too, that I really love the things outside of work that keep people from showing up the way they want to. So I coach a lot on marriage and parenting and relationships and identity and boundaries and those, and faith, those types of things that really keep us in a healthy place so that we can show up in our business and make a lot of money. And so those are typically the women that I'm working with.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. Okay. So today, and just for people to know too, you've been married for how long?
About 15 years.
And then you guys have kids?
We have 3 kids, 11. My daughter is 11. Nora, my middle guy, is 9. Jack, and my little guy is James, and he's 4.
Okay. Yeah. So you're right in the thick of it with us.
Yes.
Yes.
We're
so what you said, 11, 9, and 4?
Yes.
So we have 13, 11, 9, and 6.
Okay. Yeah.
So very similar.
We have a little bit of a gap, I say, in the most loving way. James was kind of a miscommunication, not necessarily not wanted. Love him. But there's a little bit of a gap there. And so we had to adjust again.
The 4-year-old?
The 4-year-old. Yeah.
The 4-year-old.
Yeah. There's a 5-year gap in there. But they're so great. Like they're just so much fun.
And now there's no more miscommunication?
There's,
is it pretty clear?
I can't say that there, I don't know.
There'll be no more?
It's not clear yet.
Okay. I was just curious. Yeah. Okay. I love that. Well, today we're going to talk about soul rest.
Yes. It's my favorite thing.
I know it's your favorite thing to talk about. So I was like, okay, Whitney, we'll talk about your favorite thing, but tell me, first of all, I think that could, like when I first hear soul rest, I don't know if any other listeners are thinking of this. I think of like the buzzword of self-care.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I kind of just for my own, like just some people like to know this is what my thoughts are on the self-care buzzword.
Yes.
As I get kind of annoyed that we think, oh, we're going to go get our nails done and and we're going to have self-care. And I'm like, that's not really what matters.
Yeah.
It's really not. Like to me, self-care is like deep and it's just not like, oh, I'm going to go. And it's almost like the girl math thing going around. It's like,
oh, man,
it's that buzzword of self-care. I'm just going to excuse certain expenditures and call it self-care.
Yeah.
When actually we're not even better at the end of it.
That's right.
And so I'd like to maybe say this topic we're talking about today is not self-care like the world sees it. Yeah. And it's not a whole bunch of expenditures like, I got my hair colored and my nails done and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that I feel better and can face tomorrow. I really want to put that aside and say that's the girl math thing.
Yeah.
What we really want to go to is like the root. And that's what I think you're referring to when you say soul rest.
Yes.
So soul rest should not be equated with the world of self-care that we see on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
So let's dive into what you would define as soul rest.
Yeah. Well, so I come from a background of faith, and typically my clients are as well. And so from my perspective and the way that I see it and how it kind of engages in my own life is I think about my soul being at rest when I'm truly trusting that the Lord has my best interests and that I'm keeping company with him. And so what I mean by that is that when I find my soul in turmoil or when I experience burnout, it usually is because there are things in my mind, not in my body, that are in chaos, or that it feels a little bit kind of up in the air. And so when I think of, my husband asks me often, he's like, why don't things bother you? Or why didn't that comment bother you? And I like to think, man, I really just want to be the most unoffendable person there is. And I think that when we truly find soul rest, it means that we are not taking on burdens that aren't ours, that in my faith, that the Lord has not asked me to take. So I think, especially as entrepreneurs, we tend to take everyone's burdens on all the time. And we think, I know how to troubleshoot. I know how to deal with this stuff. And so if you're telling me something, it automatically becomes my burden. I'm going to take that on. Or we're engaging with one of our employees or a team member or something like that. And what they say, it automatically comes in and I'm responsible for that. And when we do that over and over in multiple friend groups and multiple relationships, then we're holding a lot of burdens that we've never been asked to hold. And that's when we experience overwhelm. And that's when we get to burnout. And so I think that when we can experience soul rest, it's understanding whose burden is that? And is that mine to carry? And then how can I just kind of let things go? So there's a verse that's in Matthew that talks about living freely and lightly. And it talks about only carrying the burdens that the Lord has asked us, or only carrying the things that we know we can actually handle, and being aware of our capacity. So soul rest in my mind is just allowing myself to feel good and confident about the things that I know I'm being asked of. And then also knowing that the Lord is for me and that he's not holding back, and that people, I think in general, if you're not a person of faith, it's believing the best in others, giving other people the benefit of the doubt. Because when we believe certain things about people, when we have expectations of people, we're going to be disappointed. And that's when we just it feels weighty, right? It feels, there's a lot of expectation there that I don't think we were meant to carry. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I just want to share with our listeners that there's a book I'm reading with my teenage son right now. It's called Stay in Your Lane.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really, really great read for adults. And it's an adult book, but it's great to read with your teenagers. My friend told me about it and we're going through it. And it's talking about what's mine, what's theirs, and what's God's.
Yeah.
And just kind of, if you can separate all of the things that we can be anxious about and decide, okay, what's mine to actually own and change, what's other people's, and then what's God's, and ultimately I can't, change the outcome.
Yes.
And I just have to trust God with that. Right.
Yes.
So, that's a lesson we learned many years ago. When our son had cancer, we had to realize, okay, what's mine, what's theirs, the doctors, right? And then what's God's in the end, ultimate outcome. Right. And so I just want to say that's a great tool to listen or to read through if you have kids. I think that's a great thing. And I've noticed it does help with anxiety because you don't carry stuff that's not yours or intended. And so that would be a soul rest. The other thing that you mentioned that made me think of something is when you said assuming the best of others. Yeah. So Brene Brown did a long research study about what the happiest people are doing or what was consistent about the happiest people. Yeah. So she met with, anybody from a trauma person that has gone through trauma or PTSD, or people that haven't gone through hard things, or, just the whole spectrum. Yeah. Some were happy, some were not happy. And it was not there was nothing consistent about their past that made them happy. So some people had gone through stuff and some people hadn't. The only consistent thing for people that were happy were the ones that truly believed that the other person is doing their best. Yes. And so you kind of alluded to that, and it made me think of her research, because I always think that's when I had true freedom with a lot of relationships, when I just reframed, instead of being upset with them for being the way they were, or even trauma victims could be happy. They even looked at their their abuser, and they said, oh, they were just doing their best.
Oh man.
And I can't even imagine that.
Oh yeah.
But when you think about it, at the end of the day, we all do want a peaceful, restful soul,
Yes.
right? We want our soul to be at rest when we put our head on our pillow at night.
Yes.
And I think the way to get through that day is to assume everyone we interacted with was just doing their best.
Yes.
And if we can do that, I hope people listening will have the freedom that I experienced after looking at people differently, and just almost having a grace, right? For people showing up the way that they're showing up, and saying, okay, well, I can't change them, but I can change me.
Yes. Yes.
So I love that.
Yeah. I think about that too when, you know, as you look at and apply that to yourself too, believing that I'm doing my best today so we can give ourselves grace, because I think when we get to the moments of overwhelm, that the shame that comes in is, I should be doing this better. I should be further along, or I have this successful business. I should be doing well in all of these areas. And so we don't extend that same grace to ourselves. And so when we don't believe that about ourselves first, when we don't love that about ourselves first, it's very difficult to extend that to others. And when we have unrealistic expectations of ourselves, it's very difficult to extend that to others. And so I think that first, understanding who we are, how we've been created, how we've been designed, and to love those things about ourselves. And then out of that, then loving others in that same way. And there was one other thing that you had said in that I was thinking about with the soul rest piece, that one of the pieces that I see in entrepreneurship and burnout is that we often think because we should just do all of the things. And one of the things that it's that like, oh, I have been given this gift. I need to steward this gift really well. And one of the reasons we don't experience soul rest is because we say yes to all the things. And then we begin to resent the things that have actually gotten us to that place. So that it could be the one thing that built us that main stream of income. It could be your relationship with your spouse. It could be being a parent. And so when we spread ourselves so thin across the board and say yes to all the things, we just feel that overwhelm. We don't know how to identify it. And so we don't know, okay, if God is really for me, and if I really trust that he has my best interests at heart, then what are the things that I've said yes to that I shouldn't have said yes to? What are the burdens that I'm carrying that I shouldn't be? And how do I trust that if I let go of those, he's still going to bless me in that season, and he's still not withholding from me? And so anyway, that was one thing.
Well, and I love the word that you kept saying was the should.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting word.
Yeah. Especially as entrepreneurs.
Right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts when I just pause on the word should?
Oh man, I hear it all the time. I hear it in my own head a lot, really. And then I hear it from clients. I should be a better wife. I should be able to keep my house cleaner. I've got a house cleaner that comes in. I should be a better mom because everything else in my life is going well. I should have more patience. I should be a better friend. I should be this goal weight because everything else is going well.
What about if it's not I? Like, all those are very real.
Yes.
And then the other half is they should.
Yes. Right. Exactly. Yeah. They should have had a better reaction to that, or they should have their stuff together, or
they should be grateful for this opportunity.
Yes.
Or they should have told me thank you, or they should have done this. You know what I'm saying? Is the word should I'm just curious, is it rooted out of the same word of shame?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think they're probably cousins.
They have to be cousins.
They have to be. They're definitely related.
I want to be like the Greek dad in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. He's like, and the root word comes from, but I mean, shame and should, I just think they're so connected, because every time you say the word should in all of those phrases, whether it's myself or someone else, I feel the shame associated with it.
Right. Yes. Okay. So the difference in shame and guilt, right? Shame is I am a bad person. Guilt is I did something bad, right? So the shame in that is like the should. I think you're right when you say that like I actually should, if I can't, then I'm a bad person. There's something wrong with me.
Right.
And if you can't, then there's something wrong with you. So I do think, that's definitely,
Don't you think they have a root word together?
Yeah.
I think they do.
We just came up with that.
We're going to pretend like we're the
Renee
grandfather.
Has nothing.
We're going to say it's connected. Shame and should.
Definitely.
Okay. So why would you say it's important to identify to understand your identity as a entrepreneur or female entrepreneur? Why is it important to really understand, like, this is who I am if I'm an entrepreneur or a business person, or even, I mean, whatever your identity is, fill in the blank. It could be working mom, working dad, or single mom, single dad, whatever that is. Why is it important to really understand that identity?
Yeah, well, I think for me as a believer, when I think about identity, I tie it back to nothing. It doesn't have anything to do with what I do and everything to do with who I am and how I was created. So I believe I was created for a purpose, and I have a purpose, and then I have an assignment, two different things. And we can talk about that in a second. And I was created to do something good and to be in this world and create something. So the person that I was created in the image of God. I'm a daughter. I am going to inherit going to heaven and being a daughter of the King. So that is my identity outside of what I do for work. I think when we get in trouble and when we don't understand our identity, we tend to link it very closely to what we do, and then our worth comes from our work. And so if something doesn't go well with work,
yes,
then our identity kind of falls apart, and we're asking, who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? This is a representation of me. This is, if this isn't going well, it means something's wrong with me, right? So I think that when we can pull it away from what our job is or vocation or assignment, and we can get back to who am I, and how was I created, and letting that be enough, letting that be where our worth comes from, then anything that we do in this world is not going to affect that. And so, and I think that is...
Or if you have a business that fails. I mean, I would say, I don't know what the stats are, but so many people that start businesses, they fail, or they try again in another business. Or, I mean, I love listening to entrepreneurial stories. Yeah. And if their identity isn't clear, and whether they're faith believing or not, I'm just saying in general, if your identity isn't clear, when one thing fails, you're going to be a mess versus seen as a lesson learned, and you move forward and try another idea or another business. Or, I mean, that happens every day here. We try new things in our business, and some of them work, some of them don't. And if we wrapped our identity, I think it would be very crippling, right? If it was with what we do.
Totally. You're so right. You're so right. And I love that you even broke it down into just the everyday things. It might not be that you close your doors, but it could be, oh, we didn't treat that person well, or, oh, I didn't have a great response to that, or I didn't interact well, or I slipped up here, I didn't follow through, or whatever it is. Those things can quickly become what define us. And I think that there's so much freedom in saying, I am who I've been created to be, and that's enough. And if I am being a good steward of what I've been given, then that is what I've been called to. But I think it's important to recognize it's not because of what I've created that makes me valuable or worthy.
I love that. Okay, so you were talking a little bit about assignment versus purpose.
Yes.
And we have in our notes that we want to briefly touch on the shame cycle.
Yes. Okay, great.
Because this definitely, I mean, I think that if we identify it quickly, then we can stop it.
Yes,
but I think people don't even know the shame cycle. So I think it'd be good to educate them on that today.
Yes. Okay. So I feel like there might be multiple ones out there. The one that I've kind of thought about and tweaked a little, I had to make a little graphic for myself, but typically what happens is we'll make a mistake or we'll, do something wrong. And at least if I think about it in my own life, I tend to hide. I really love to if I make a mistake, I want to just hide. And maybe I call that processing, or I'm just like, ooh, I don't feel good about that. So I'm going to retreat a little bit. Usually what happens is we come out of that hiding and find awareness. Okay, what happened? If we're in somewhat of a healthy place, like how did this happen, and what happened, and how did I respond, and how can I do better? Typically where I think the world can kind of turn the shame cycle into just more of a generalized shame cycle is the world would move into self-sufficiency. How can I fix this? What can I do to not repeat this? And it feels kind of like a lot of pressure. Like, what am I going to do to not do this again? And then we get back into shame, and then we make another mistake, and then we hide, and then we find awareness, and then go into self-sufficiency. Where I think as a Christian, and where I think the Lord is maybe calling us into, is when we find that awareness, we go into that forgiveness piece like we talked about earlier. okay, so I've now have the awareness, rather than going into how can I fix this for myself? What am I going to do to not repeat this? What lesson can I learn here? And what is the Lord inviting me into? And maybe that was actually for my good and I didn't recognize it. And then there's that forgiveness piece. Like how is that not going to become a part of my identity, but simply just something that I can move away from so I don't get back into the cycle of shame. And I can really take that instance and then move away from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly the cycle. I was thinking of the words that I've heard with the cycle is shame, fear, control.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So shame is the same starting point, right?
Yes.
Fear is when you said you retreat.
Yes.
And I would say probably because you're afraid, like,
yes.
you know, oh my goodness, I can't believe I made this mistake or whatever. So you are afraid. And then control is that
I gotta go fix it.
Yes. Controlling the situation, controlling the circumstance. How do I make sure this never happens again?
Yeah.
Versus saying, okay, I'm going to forgive myself or forgive the person or whatever it might be.
Yes.
And release control.
Yes.
Because I really never had it to begin with.
Which is, I mean, that comes perfectly back to soul rest. I think when we aren't experiencing soul rest, it's because we're trying to control things because we don't believe God has our best interests at heart. Mm-hmm. I was just talking to a client this week who's pregnant with her first baby. And she said, she's in her 3rd trimester. I'm having such a hard time with this because I am afraid if I fully give it over to God what if I don't have my baby at the end? And what I told her in that moment was, I can't say in this moment and promise that you will. I can't say that you for sure will have your baby in this end because I don't actually know. But I know that control is just kind of an illusion, that we never really have it anyway. It's just that we think we do. And when we think we do, it creates so much pressure. And that is when we do not see soul rest. It is when we are in chaos and when we're in turmoil and when we're stressed out and overwhelmed and we experience burnout.
Mm-hmm. So that was something you said on here is like soul rest can't be achieved just by resting your body.
Yeah. So John Mark Comer has a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Have you read that before?
I have.
Oh my gosh. Did it just change your life? I feel like I read it and I was like, oh, I've got so
hurrying.
much to work on.
I'm hurrying all the time.
All the time. Yeah. I love in that book how he talks about that love, joy, and peace cannot actually work and you can't hurry and love. You can't hurry and find joy. You can't hurry and have peace. And so one of the things that I love about the way that he talks about just slowing down is that everything that we do is in a hurry right now. And the only way that we can actually fix the problem of burnout or experience rest is not in our bodies. It starts with our mind. So first we have to, John Mark Comer talks about like first attending to the body. But burnout isn't a symptom of our bodies. It is a symptom of our mind being in unrest. And so it doesn't help when we just go take a nap or I'm just going to go on a vacation. It means we have to actually intentionally slow and then recognize what burdens we're carrying and ask or take those off of our shoulders and remove those from our life in order to actually find peace and find joy and find love. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so good. What boundaries would you say you recommend to people?
Man. Well, there's lots of different kinds.
I know.
Yes, but the one that I love the most is I don't know what other people call them, but I just call them boundaries of the mind, because I think that we typically think anything that anyone says to me, I'm responsible for. So it goes into my head, and then I have to do something with it. Boundaries of the mind, in my opinion, really is being very intentional and discerning what I'm allowing to take root in my mind and what I'm not. So I even think about it visually, like, okay, so they said that, is that going to become my thing? Or am I going to let that go? Is that now my burden to carry, or is that someone else's? And so it could be something someone did, like your brother didn't come for Thanksgiving and you wanted him to, or you expected your mom to treat your kids a certain way, or you've got something in your mind like an expectation and somebody didn't live up to that. You can either choose to allow all of that to come in and take root, and then you have to do something with it, or you can say, is it mine? Am I supposed to do something with it, or can I let that go? So I think of it as like boundaries are just something that separates you from another person, right? So in your mind, it's just, what am I allowing to take root and to keep me from finding rest and what am I not? What is not mine to carry? I think about this when people go on vacation. It's really hard for some people to go on vacation, me included, at least to go on vacation with my husband, because he's the achiever and he never stops thinking about work. I tend to do great on vacation because I can just really shut it down. But I find that even when we close our computers, our brains are still reeling about, okay, how do I think my employees are doing? I got this email. Somebody said something to me. I know this event is coming up. How did that? I know my coaching client just sent me a message. And so am I going to allow all of that to come in and I feel like I need to do something with it? Or do I feel peace and rest about closing my laptop, even when I'm not near it and I'm on the beach or in the mountains or whatever, and I'm allowing myself and the Lord to take control of those thoughts? And so it really is, are these productive thoughts or are they unproductive thoughts? Are they going to help me find rest or are they going to keep me in chaos?
That's good. And what I would say connecting to that is I go back to, again, do I really ultimately have control over this?
Right. Yeah.
Like is me thinking about this right now going to change the outcome?
Yes.
And that's a really basic way to look at it, but it's so literally good. Like, just by me thinking about this any more than I do, like, will it help the team back at home, or will it? No, by thinking about it and letting it take more of my time and thoughts and energy, it changes nothing.
Yes.
It changes nothing.
How long do you feel like that took you to get to that place? Like, it doesn't happen right away, right?
I don't think it was a length of time. I really do think it was the traumatic event of, like I told you, when Brody had cancer.
Yeah.
I think that's when I really learned, like, I thought I was in control this whole time.
Right.
And I had to have a very traumatic event kind of slap me, wake me up and go, you were never in control.
Yes.
Like, you had he was never in daycare. He had like organic formula and healthy food. And, I'm just saying, like, I've used daycare since, but I'm just saying, like, I'm saying to you that, like, this child who I had, like, thought I created this really healthy environment for still got cancer.
Yeah.
And then you realize, okay, like, we can give him the best medicine, have him have the best doctor, whatever I can do. But at the end, like, I really ultimately don't have control of the outcome.
Yes.
And so I don't know if it was a length of time, but I would say that having an event, and everybody's gone through something hard. Yeah. I mean, even if your child didn't have cancer, I think that everybody, like, if I ask you, I'm sure you've gone through some very hard things too. Yeah. And so when I meet people, I ask them, so that hard thing, or when I coach them too, is like, the hard thing you went through, were you ever in control of the outcome? And they're like, no. So similarly, you're not in control of this outcome either.
Yes.
You can put forth your best effort. You can set systems in place. You can, preemptively plan for, like, a cushion for mistakes and errors. And, we even have in our business a line item, and it's like a part of our budget where we anticipate spending X amount of thousands of dollars a year for errors. I mean, we know human errors take place, but what I'm saying is, like, sometimes you go on that vacation and it's like, well, I can't change it. So is it really helpful to add any more of my energy to it?
Yes.
No. Same thing with my kids. Like, if they forget their lunch at school, I don't really think about it. I'm like, like, that's a problem. They're going to be okay. They're going to probably be hungry when I pick them up at 3:30, but they'll learn to never forget their lunch again, So I just maybe have released like you said, it's an illusion.
Yes.
Everybody listening, I hope they really heard you say that. Like, control really is an illusion. So what I would say I feel free in right now is just, I live the best day I can. Yeah. I plan for the best that I can, like, as much as I can. And then I release the rest.
Yeah, that's good. That's so good. I think about that moment probably when you started to figure out some of that diagnosis and you had to maybe take a little bit of a step back from work and be present with your family. The business didn't crumble. It didn't go away. So there's like, wait, how is this still working? And I'm not fully there all the time telling people what to do. Either I've done a really great job hiring a team, or I was never really in control that when I thought I was.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful because you got to the place where you could step away and things didn't go away completely.
Mm-hmm. And people, I am amazed. I always see people step up and fill in the gap when there's a need.
Oh, so good. Yes.
And I think that sometimes we don't allow them to have their full potential because we just see them in our box of how we see them. And so I always encourage leaders, I'm like, believe more of your people.
Oh, it's good. Yes.
Like, if you see someone is trustworthy, that's really all you need.
Right.
They're trustworthy and they have a good intent.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, let's trust them with more. And they can't believe someone believed in them.
Right.
A lot of times they're like, wow, you believe in me? And they rise.
Yes.
And so I always say, see someone in their very best version of themselves, even if they don't see it yet.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. I love John Maxwell, of course. And I feel like one of the things he says is just like surround yourself with people that are better than you at some things, so that you always know, so that it keeps us humble, I think. But we also know it's not up to me to keep everything running. Like my job is to go find people that are better at those things than I am. And I'm so grateful. Like I have someone that helps me with social media. I don't love social media, and they're going to do it way better than I can. And I'm so grateful for that. And then I think it just takes away that pride that it's up to me and it all falls on me and I'm the reason this is going great. And I think it also takes away, it takes away our ability to say, I'm the one that gets all the glory. And then I think in my own life, I just want God to have the glory in what I'm doing, because I'm nothing special, and what I've created or put out there has nothing to do with me. It's the Lord working through me to create these things and to create these spaces for these women. I'm just asking the questions that he's giving me. It really is not anything special. Well,
and, just one last thought I have that really helped me was thinking through what are the things that only I can do versus like, hey, even though, like you said, most entrepreneurs can do everything in the business. Yeah. What are really the things that only I can do? Yeah. So when I go to the basics, it's like only I can be my husband's wife.
Yes.
Nobody else can, I can't hire that out, right? Nope, that's me.
Don't want to.
Okay, and the kids, like I am their only mom that they will ever have. And so I want to show up really strong in the areas that only I can do. Yeah, and then, I mean, in the business, truthfully, anybody could do anything in the business. I think that I have...
Because you've worked so hard to build it to that point.
True, but I do believe that I could train anyone and they can do it. Yeah. Like I do believe that. Like even the CEO role, I do believe I could train someone to do it. But am I specifically gifted in a certain way? I do feel that I'm visionary. Yeah. I do feel like I have a really big idea for brand and how that should play out. And so I think that would be right now in this season, how I show up. I make sure that like we as a company stay on path with like what we're intended to do. Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, like as a CEO role, I make sure that those are how my hours are spent at work is in the things that only certain mindsets can see. Yes. But could I train it? I believe, I think we're all replaceable.
Yeah. But isn't that scary sometimes?
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, hey, that's a really good place to be, because again, it's not like all about me. Yeah. But I do make sure in my work that I do the things that only I can do, or that I believe right now maybe I'm the best gifted at on the team. Yes. And then I let them do the things like you said that they're really gifted at.
So good.
So good. Okay. Well, we always like to talk about your favorite drink, and I know you have lots of favorite drinks, and we were kind of chuckling today that you're like, well, I picked a boring or like a basic.
I didn't even remember what I put. Yeah.
But you said a French vanilla latte. Okay. So that's what we're going to cheers to. Great. But I would like to know, do you ever drink anything else besides water and French vanilla lattes?
I mean, I've got kind of a whole slew of like the little packets that, from the companies you pour in network marketing.
The little health packets.
I've got all the health packets and electrolytes and all of that I've got, as coaching. It's like the pink drink and then my coffee and my water all sitting at my desk all at the same time.
Oh yeah. 3 beverages.
Always 3 beverages.
I mean, at a minimum.
Yes. But I am not high maintenance with my drinks at all. So I will drink whatever it is in front of me.
Well, if you could see behind the table right now, we both already have our multiple beverages, but let's cheers to our vanilla lattes. And I just want to say, I'm so glad you're on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Such important conversations. Yeah. And I want to thank you guys for paying attention and joining us on the show. So if you like this episode, please comment, subscribe. We'd love your subscription, and share with your friends, because I think these are important conversations to be had. And if you don't have the moment to have coffee date with Whitney, I hope today you feel like you did. So thanks again for joining us on the Something New Show. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow The Something New Show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.